I want to talk about capitalism and how capitalism works. I feel like there's a very large part of the population in America today who doesn't understand, one, how capitalism works, and number two, the benefits of capitalism. Capitalism is being invaded by communism, by liberalism, by socialism. Now, I'm not saying anything bad about one system or another. I don't really take a stand on these things. I just tell you how they work, and then you make up your mind. Real quick, capitalism is all about money. All about money, having money. Creating money out of nothing. So if I went down to the beach today and I got a piece of driftwood, and I put it in a wagon, and I pulled it all the way home or into town. I cleaned it up, and I said, hey, I got a piece of driftwood for sale. The guy comes to me and says, hey, I could use some firewood. I'll buy it from you for $10. And I say, well, that's not going to help me out. Took me more time and energy than that. The next guy says, hey, that looks like a good piece of art. That would look good in my front yard next to my mailbox. I'll give you $20 for it. I'm thinking, well, okay. Then the next guy comes along and says, hey, I could use that piece of driftwood. In my wood carving business, I'll give you $30 for it. So I'm going to take the $30 to the guy who wants to use it in his wood carving business. Or I could say, I'm going to become a wood carver and put another 25 hours into this driftwood, and then I can charge $300. But then I have to start a business. I have to find customers. What is capitalism? Capitalism is 7-Eleven. There's products inside the store, and you walk in with your money and buy those products. Where did you get your money? Where did you get your money to buy those products? Well, you had to have a job, and then you went to work and produced products for your boss, and he paid you, and then you took part of your check and paid your mortgage, your rent, your car payment, unfortunately, your gasoline, your cell phone, your cable TV, unfortunately. Every time you spend $1, you are creating jobs for someone. Now, those jobs might be, in Alabama, or those jobs might be in China today. A lot of the Chinese jobs are going over to India now. So it's not really a local economy, it's a worldwide economy. What is socialism? Why are we not a socialist country? Because socialism requires you to pay 40% tax and then receive everything for free. So-called free. It's not really free. The government, in capitalism, you have the freedom to buy health care or not buy health care. In capitalism, you have the freedom to buy a gasoline car or an electric car. In socialism, they tell you what kind of health care to buy. They take the money out of your check and then tell you where to get the health care. They take your freedom away. So I'm retired on Social Security. I'm 63 years old. I've been on Social Security for a year now. I'm only 63. I just lost 70 pounds. I'm in good shape. I could go down and get a job, making $40,000 a year if I wanted to participate in capitalism. And I made the choice. No, I'm not going to do that. I participated in capitalism for 50 years. I worked. Starting at 14 years old for other people. 24, 34, 44, 54. I was fully retired at age 54. I worked for 40 years. Capitalism has treated America very well during my lifetime. Capitalism has made many people wealthy. And I'll say the people who participated. I mean, if you bought a house 40 years ago, it tripled in price, in value. That's the downfall about capitalism. That's why people are attracted to socialism. Because the downfall of capitalism is, as soon as you get out of high school, or there's a seal right there in the water, its head sticking out right there. Believe it or not, that seal is participating in a form of capitalism. That seal, there's a whole bunch of seals down on the dock you can see there. That seal is looking for its food. A lot of animals will trade food with each other. True story. Just like capitalism. They have a seashell or a crab that they caught, and they will go and trade it with other animals for other stuff. But the seagulls are socialist. I know it makes you laugh. Seagulls do not trade. You throw 3 pieces of bread on the ground, and seagulls will rip it apart from each other. So you go to the 7-Eleven to buy coffee, and then the guy that works the overnight shift from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m., that guy always looks like he's in a fog. He's been doing it for years. He could be the nicest guy in the world, but he does the shift that nobody else ever wants. Working on the night shift. Working on the night shift. There's a lot of benefits to it, but, it screws up your biological clock. So capitalism starts the day you were born. Your parents paid the doctor. And the doctor paid his rent on the building, his mortgage, his nurses, well, it used to be the nurse used to also be the secretary. Back in the day, she used to have to do everything. Now, a nurse is just a nurse, and they have professional administrative staff that do all the billing, the secretarial, because the insurance companies have the hospital so screwed up that you need someone that just sits there 50 hours a week to figure it all out, a professional. If the nurse had to do that, it used to be, 40 years ago, or even 30 years ago, you'd go down to the doctor, you'd see the nurse. They wouldn't even talk to you. Oh, the doctor's ready to see you. You'd come out. How would you like to pay today? Well, how much is it? It's $58. I'll just pay cash. Or you'd pull out a union insurance card, or you have Blue Cross Blue Shield. Say, okay, we'll bill your insurance company, and then we'll just send you a bill in the mail for the other, like, $9. This is a true story. When I got a job at 17 and a half years old in a packing house, I was working there illegally. You couldn't work there unless you were 18. So I was like 17 and a quarter, and I was working at this packing house. And they offered insurance. It was $9 a month. I'm not kidding. No deductibles, 100% coverage, $9 a month, and no one took it. Only sick people took it. They said, nah, what do I need insurance for? I'm not going to. Back then, $9 was like $90 today. So people said, $9? I could buy a case of beer for $9. Back 35 years ago, you could buy a case of beer for $9. So those guys in the packing house, they were a rough group. Very rough. It was like working with a bunch of hobos down at the train station or something. And no, they weren't going to waste $9 a month. Unless they had some conditions and stuff. Medical conditions. There were no prescriptions back then. Yeah, believe it or not, 40 years ago, prescriptions didn't really exist other than painkillers and stuff. About the only prescription you could get was some blood thinner or some heart medication. That was about it. So in capitalism, the insurance companies, and in capitalism, the drug companies, pharmaceutical companies have the hospitals completely screwed over. But if you kept it at true capitalism, the cost would come way down and everybody could afford it. But what happens is we try to mix socialism with capitalism. And so socialism brings the cost way up. And you say, no, I'm on free healthcare. I don't pay anything. Well, that means you don't make anything. You don't earn anything, money-wise. If you made $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 a year, you'd have to pay a big premium for Obamacare. Because socialism tells us we have to cover everyone that pays, and then now we have to add to it and cover everyone else who doesn't pay. And Joe Biden was a good example of this. He turned around, and all they got to do is change the threshold numbers. Remember, 10 years ago, you couldn't get food stamps barely. Well, then Joe Biden came along and said, we're going to make it to where if you they go off the poverty level numbers. If you earn 150% of the poverty level, you still qualify for food stamps. So what is capitalism? Real quick. Capitalism starts the day you were born. Then they educate you and give you health care and feed you. And when you turn 18, you either go to college or you go straight into capitalism. So today they convinced millions of kids, literally children, go to college for 4 years or 6 years, get extraordinary loans, extraordinarily large loans. And when you get out, we're going to guarantee you $100,000 a year. The majority of those people are cashiers at Walmart, stocking shelves at Walmart. The college degree did them absolutely no good whatsoever. So when I was young, a very small percentage of the population went to college. Look at that bird right there. That's yep, it just landed right there. That's a kingfisher. That thing can sit in one place and flutter its wings and just sit there over the water looking to catch something. That bird is practicing capitalism. It's looking for its food. It's working. That's what capitalism is. So when I was young, guys would say, no, I'm going straight into the mechanic business with my uncle. No, I found a house for $48,000. I'm going to go right to work, buy this house, and get married to, Susie Q. Or if you needed some technical information, you went to something called technical college. It was a local community college. I'm not making this up. When I got out of high school, the local community college was $800 a year. I thought about going. I said, well, with books and I could live at my parents'. I could go to community college for like $1,400 a year total. Now, if you're listening to this, you're like, $1,400 a year for a college? And you only went for 2 years, then you got your degree, and you went right into business. But the way capitalism works, you go to school for 18 years, until you're 18, and you either go straight into capitalism or you delay it, you go 4 years to college, and then, but what do? You get out, you go straight into capitalism. Now, back before I was old enough, people would, these kids during the early 70s and the late 60s, they would delay college for a year because it really had very little value. They would delay college for a year, and they would go over to Europe, backpacking all over Europe. I mean, if you lived in Europe, you would see thousands of kids backpacking all over the European continent in groups, enjoying themselves. And you could do this back then for $100 a month, easily. I mean, you could get like hostels. You could stay couch surfing in a hostel for like $4 a night. But most people just went backpacking, and then your food was only like $5 a day. I mean, it was nothing to go over there with a group of people. As long as you could get the airline ticket, They'd have people getting right off the big major airlines with their backpacks and then start hiking right from there. Kind of like people do today with the, well, I forgot the name of it. The something trail on the East Coast. It'll come to me, but. So capitalism is, you go to work from age 20 to 60. You get married, you raise a family over from age 20 to 50. You pay off a house. See, back in the day, if you bought a house at age 28, people would say, oh, you're getting a late start. You say, well, houses were a lot cheaper back then. Yeah, well, we only made $5, $6, $7 an hour, too. If I was starting over today, no, I'm not complaining. I'm saying if I was a 18-year-old kid today and I knew what I know, I would go directly down and I would buy a $100,000 house in the Midwest. I would work 40 hours a week. I would save 30% of everything I made in mutual funds. And by the time I was 55 years old, I'd be a multimillionaire. That's how capitalism works. So what you're saying is, well, let me say this first. Capitalism works when 80% of the population is working. The only people that aren't working are children up to 16 years old and retired people over 70 years old that just can't work anymore. Back when I was younger, Social Security was only about $400 a month. So you had to keep working. That's why most people that I grew up with, I mean, my people that were older than me, they all worked right up to within 1 or 2 years of them dying. It wasn't about retiring. It was never about retiring. It was about being financially secure. So what's the problem today? Okay, we went from 80 to 90% participation in the workforce down to 49%. Do you know only 50% of Americans actually work 40 hours a week? Or part-time? So we went, the amount of people that are working and producing money and then taking that money and paying taxes and then taking the rest of their money into the economy has been cut from 80 to 90% down to 50, let's just say approximately 50%. When I was young, every single kid, see that white hair, that great egret just flew by? Every single kid I knew dreamed, when I'm 15, I'm getting a job, and when I'm 16, I'm getting my license and a car immediately. I remember back then, every kid paid for their own clothes. I can hear the old people my age going, yep, their heads going up and down. Yep, that's right. It was a thing of pride to show your parents, I'm turning into an adult and I don't need you anymore. That's what you want to happen. You want your children to grow up to where they can take care of themselves. That's what capitalism is. So today, I'm going to wrap this up. So today, we're mixing 50% capitalism with 20% or maybe only 15% socialism. And then that's why you get young people who complain about billionaires taking all your money instead of paying you a higher wage. Well, capitalism doesn't work that way. Only socialism works that way. There's no country on earth that takes all the money from billionaires and pays the workers more. And you may disagree with that and say, no, over in Switzerland and Europe and all this stuff. No, that's not what they're doing. The government takes the money away from all workers. People say, if only Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and people like Donald Trump would pay more in taxes. Well, that's just, you just don't know the facts. F-A-C-T, facts. You don't know. If you took all the money all the billionaires make in the world, mathematicians, economists have gone over the numbers thousands and thousands of times. If you took all the wealth that they now have, and you started paying everyone equally, your wage would go up about 25 cents. That's what people don't understand. But then you'd have a problem because the company that you work for would be out of business. Look at this sunrise. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, that's stunning. The company you work for would go out of business, and then you would be out of a job, and we have young people today that say, that's fine with me. That's fine. I hope it all collapses, man. If the United States collapses economically, it would be worse than World War III times 10. Because people who talk like that have never really ever been hungry. You say, I could handle it. Yeah, well, what about your grandparents? Your grandparents would starve to death. What about your mom and dad? They would start starving to death. What about your sisters? What about your little baby nephews and nieces? They would starve to death. There would be no health care, no food. You see how the entire United States has been screaming because they did not renew food stamps this month for only 1 week. People didn't get their food stamps for 1 week, and 40 million people are screaming bloody murder at the top of their lungs. Okay. Well, who pays for those food stamps? Capitalist. It comes out of the taxes, the food stamps, the SNAP benefits comes from the taxes people pay from working. So a capitalist is paying for your food stamps. So if you say, I want to destroy capitalism, then you can cancel all your food stamps, all your medical care, all your the free therapy you get, all your libraries, all the roads that you work on. You will no longer be able to go into the national parks, the state parks, the forest. They will have to close them all off. There will be no money for firefighters. There will be no money for police. And guess what? There will be no money for your local politicians, your city council. There will be no more, you'll have no more representation. And then small gangs of people with large guns would rise up in their pickup trucks and start driving around cities and ruling your cities, because we no longer could afford to pay the National Guard. We could no longer afford to pay the airline, the people that take care, the traffic controllers, airline traffic controllers. Everything would completely collapse. Here comes that great egret. Look, isn't that beautiful? Let me wrap this up. Here's how capitalism works. You get out of high school and you go to work. And you work for 40 years until you're 60 years old. And hopefully during those 40 years, you were smart enough to save at least $100,000 out of all that money you made. I'm talking today's society. That's only like 4% of your paycheck. So here's where the country is today. Here's where the United States is today. We have a very large growing number of people under 45 years old, and it's mostly men. It's not the women. I'm telling you, it's the men. I call them younger guys. From 20 years old up to 45 years old, they don't want to work anymore. And they say, no, I want everything to be given to me for free. I want to go on disability at 45 years old, and I never want to work again as long as I live. Well, who's going to pay for that? A capitalist. Who's paying for it? Your grandma's paying for it when she goes down to work and she pays her taxes. Anyone who pays taxes, you say, well, I'm on disability now, I'm never going to pay taxes again. There's a lot of 30-year-old young guys in America that say, I want all the billionaires to give me some of their money. Let's take Elon Musk, for example. The world's richest man, give or take, 1 month to the next. He's got a lot of money. But you don't understand how business works. He does not have a lot of money. There isn't a lot of money. Say, yeah, he's worth, I don't know, just picking our $500 billion. They say he's going to be worth $1 trillion in the future. Yes, he's worth. The value of everything he owns is worth $500 billion. Just like your house is paid off. I could come over to your house and say, hey, could I borrow $100,000? You say, I don't have $100,000. What do you mean? You got a $300,000 house that's paid for. And you would tell me, yes, but I personally don't have any money in the bank. I only have the value of this house if I sell it. And if I sell it, then I'll be homeless. I'll have $300,000 in the bank, but then I'll have to buy something else to live in. The same thing with corporations. Elon Musk is worth $500 billion, but he doesn't have $500 billion in the bank. He has rocket ships and Tesla car factory and the Boring Company and whatever. I don't keep up with him that much. I mean, he's a pretty nice guy if you ask me, but I got nothing against him. I like him. If you demand that he gives you the money, he's going to have to start selling things to get the money, just like you would have to sell your house to get the money. You wouldn't want someone to come over and force you to sell your house. You see, everyone I know that wants socialism, they don't want to pay for it. Nobody wants to pay. Every socialist I've ever met doesn't want to pay for what they're getting. Every person on disability, they don't want to pay for it. They want somebody else to pay for it, and that says a lot about your personal character. When you say, I'm better than everyone else because I want you to pay me and I'm not going to participate and give anything back. Capitalism only works when 80% of the population works for 50 years in a row. And then the next generation comes and starts working. The next generation comes and starts working. When you have 50 million people on food stamps, capitalism no longer works. When you have 80 million people on free health care of some kind or another, you know, capitalism is like a cookie jar. You got 10 people that bake a dozen cookies, and they put them all in this cookie jar. You got 120 cookies. And if the capitalists are just taking care of themselves, well, let's say they go down to the farmer's market and they sell these cookies. They create jobs. They buy flour, sugar, chocolate chips, then they peanut butter, then they go and they make more cookies, and then they go sell more cookies, and then they go back and make more cookies and sell more cookies. And they pay their taxes. But socialism comes along. Now, I'm not anti-socialist. Part of the Bible is socialism. I mean, giving to the needy. But that's the thing. When you have 90% participation in the workforce and only about 10% needy people, it works great. But when you have 50% participation in the workforce and 25% needy, now you got a problem. So these cookie-making capitalists, they're down at the farmer's market. And the government comes along and says, hey, we got these homeless people over here. We got these unwed mothers. We got these poor people. We passed a law in Congress that we're going to give some of your cookies to feed these people. And you say, well, wait a minute now. That put me out of business. They say, no, it won't. Because over here, we're going to create another, arm of the government. That takes all your money and spreads it around equally. That's what's about to happen in New York City. Today or tomorrow, they're going to elect a socialist. They try to call him a communist, but he's really just a socialist. He's going to start taking all the billionaires' money, a billionaire tax, and he's going to start spreading it around to all the welfare people in New York. That's his plan. It's not going to work because the billionaires have already said, if this guy wins, we're moving to Florida or Texas next year. We're going to take everything we got and leave New York City. So there won't be anybody to tax. And it's really what, I'm a Christian, so it goes off what the devil, the devil knows human nature. When I was 10 years old, all the people, my parents and their people their age and my grandparents, they wouldn't take welfare if you gave it to them. They would think that was they say, get that away from me. I'm not disabled. I wouldn't take that. And they were only making about, $300 a month. My grandparents. They said, we got a house and we can feed ourselves. We're doing just fine. Because it was a thing with God. They couldn't justify to God that they were, on welfare. But the devil knows you keep pounding that welfare drum, and men who could be working 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, saving money, getting there. They say, well, okay, I'm going to go on welfare. I'm going to take disability. And eventually you have more people on disability than you do have paying the bill. Rush Limbaugh talked about this a lot. And when you have more people on disability, so what happens is two things. The government's shut down right now. Well, they say. It doesn't seem to be bothering anyone, actually. The government, not a large enough amount. The government shut down. And so you're not getting your food stamps. And the second thing that happens is when you're on disability, they give you just enough to survive. You will never thrive. Like capitalism says, you can go out and if you work hard over 25 years, you can become a millionaire. Try becoming a millionaire on welfare. Try becoming rich. Try even starting a 401k on disability. You can't. It's impossible. They give disabled veterans $4,500 a month for 100% disability. But then, once you sign those papers, now you're not allowed to go work. Because the government's watching you, or they'll watch you through your tax records. Did you get a job and work? They might even send out some investigators to see if you're frauding the system. Fraud investigators. You could go to jail for that. And then they'd force you to pay it all back. But even at $4,500 a month, they got you exactly where they want you. If you ever have to, you have just enough to pay some rent. You can't buy a house on that much. Not a $300,000 or $400,000 house, you don't qualify. A $300,000 house would be like $2,200 a month right now. That would be like 55% of your income. You wouldn't qualify. You say, well, I'll have my spouse go work. Well, then your spouse is participating in capitalism. That's what I just said. You see, I've had neighbors on disability. They only get $1,000 a month at the most. Well, they used to get $800 a month, not that long ago, and like $90 a month in food stamps. That's all people would get. This was before Joe Biden. And they would be on subsidized rent, and their rent would be like $200 a month. No car, no cable TV, just a small cell phone for $30 a month. That's what I'm saying. We're at a point in America. They've been chipping away at capitalism. And everyone who's taking something out of the system is destroying America. But here's the deal. You're also destroying yourself. Because, the Bible says one of the greatest joys that God gives is the ability to go and work and sweat. You know what happens to your body when you stop working and you stop sweating? And you stop getting the joys of accomplishing projects? Every person I've ever known that's gone on disability just kind of sits around all day long. They eventually just sit around doing nothing. Let's end this with Henry Ford. He was the first one to come up with the production line. The Model A's, the Model T's. He was the first one to come up. He would hire like 1,000 men down a line. One guy hires 1,000 people. Do you know how many people Elon Musk has hired? Tens of thousands of people. Do you know how many people Donald Trump hires? Probably tens of thousands over his lifetime. Do you know how many people Barack Obama hires? Probably just a few hundred. He doesn't own businesses. He just gets money like endorsements, and he might own a few small businesses. Your hero, Barack Obama. And I like Barack Obama, don't get me wrong. Barack Obama, your socialist hero, and his wife is worth $250 million now. And they participate in capitalism every single day, 24 hours a day. Your socialism hero, Barack Obama, would never take socialism himself. Because it was capitalism that gave Barack Obama and his wife and family $250 million. I mean, Tom Cruise, the famous actor, he had to go out and work 30 years to get that money. Barack and Michelle Obama got it in like 8 years. Why don't you think about that? And they pay a lot of taxes. You never hear about, wouldn't you like to see how much tax they're paying? They might pay millions in taxes, but they pay a low percentage because they take a lot of that money and reinvest it so they don't have to pay taxes. It was funny when Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton got up and debating each other during the presidential election. And Hillary Clinton she made a huge mistake. I think it's literally cost her the presidency. She got up on national TV and tried to say, Donald Trump, doesn't pay any taxes. He's worth too much money. And Donald Trump says, yeah, just like you and all your friends. I'm just like you. You and your husband, Bill. And her face went white, blank. She's like, oh, crap. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton are worth they have a fund with about $300 million in the fund. And they were complaining about somebody else that had too much money. Now, I'm going to keep this under an hour, so I'll end it in like 4 or 5 minutes here. And she was trying to convince the voters, because that's the kind of people that vote for her, Donald Trump should be paying more in taxes, and then you would get more welfare. Or you would get higher wages. And I just told you that's not true. If you took all the money all the billionaires had, you would get about a 25-cent raise. But that's not actually true. You would probably lose your job. Elon Musk needs about $10 million a day just to run his corporations. So if you take part of that money, see, this is the way it is in Russia, communism. Communists are not socialist. Communists, they take whatever they want whenever they want it, the oligarchies, and the government, and they're greasing everybody's palms up there. And they give public housing and all that, but I mean, it's run down, it's horrible. The heat doesn't work, the water doesn't work, the water's contaminated. It's just like America. The cars are too expensive. When did cars become too expensive in America? When we started forcing two things upon the car companies. We started forcing new technology in them to where the emissions would be different. And then we started forcing them to make electric cars. They said, well, we're gonna force them to make $25,000 electric cars. Well, now those $25,000 electric cars are $75,000. So now nobody can afford them. So now the socialists will tell you, and the liberals in America, they're not paying you enough. It's very funny. It makes me laugh. The government comes along and says, we're going to pass a law that says you have to make electric cars. And then when they make them, no one can afford them. So then they say, we're going to pass a law. If you elect us again, we're going to pass another law that forces them to pay you a higher wage so you can afford the electric car that they're making. And you say, well, yeah, if I was making $200,000 a year, then I'd be okay. That's not true. The people who are forced by law to make the electric cars, and the solar panels and the wind turbines, and if they have to pay all the workers $40 an hour, then the electric car will be $150,000. And if you're making $40 an hour, you still won't be able to afford the car. Don't you understand? That's how it works. Now, honestly, I don't care if you understand or not. I'm only talking about this. What is, and I'll end it right here. What is the end result? You see, Social Security is not welfare. It's one of the only non-welfares in America. Social Security is an earned benefit that you paid into for 40 years or however long you worked. Social Security is an earned benefit. You earned it. You paid into it. Like a 401k. Regardless of the fact that the government wasted all the Social Security money, starting back with their hero, Ronald Reagan. You can look it up. That's why I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a Christian. Ronald Reagan was the first one to borrow all the Social Security money and say, well, we're going to borrow it and we'll pay it back. He started that. And then when he was out of office, they kept borrowing it and they never paid it back. And if you get rid of Social Security, which is an earned benefit, I paid into Social Security for 40 years. If you get rid of Social Security, you will have 50 million homeless senior citizens in America. And you say, the young people say, well, yeah, that's because, they deserve it because they ruined America. No. The people who worked for 40 years did not ruin America. Socialism is ruining America. Now, I don't care if you want to live in a country where you get all the free stuff. You get out of high school and as soon as you're 18, like in the socialist countries, you go right down, like getting a Social Security number when you're born. At 18, you go right down and sign up for free welfare. You get your card. As long as you have that card with your Social Security number on it, you're entitled to all the free health care, all the free welfare, all the free benefits, the free housing, the free everything. You're going to be in a country just like communism. If you go over to some of those places in Russia during the middle of the winter, I challenge you, those places are rat infested. The heat doesn't work. The heat goes off oil. Sounds like New York City, actually. If you remember, they promised this. The Democrats in the 1980s went into Chicago. And they said, we're going to build these beautiful places in Chicago. Well, look at them now. They're run down. They got like tens of thousands of people there living in this one area. The crime is high, drugs, prostitution, murder. But guess what? Everybody gets their monthly welfare check. Everybody's sleeping with everybody. They got women who got 5, 6, 7 children, no husband, 5 husbands. Capitalism did not destroy America. People who are forced, the working people who are forced to give the non-working people part of their money, is what is destroying America. When I go to work and I'm paying for all these products and I'm working, I'm taking care of my family, I'm paying for the health care, I'm paying for the gas, paying for the automobiles, the tires, the hoses, the belts, the oil changes. And then the government comes along and says, you have to give more of your money to people who don't want to work. That's what's destroyed America right there. And God would be your enemy. Because the Bible says very clearly, if a man shall not work, he shall not eat. You say, well, we have 50 million disabled people in America who can't work. Well, everybody and their brother knows that's a lie. We got 50 million people on some kind of welfare. And now Donald Trump's going to require. Look at that seal trying to jump up. We got 50, or Donald Trump's going to require you have to work like 20 hours a week now. Or you have to be going to school, or you have to prove you have a medical condition that you cannot possibly do anything. So capitalism works and everybody prospers. Capitalism works and everybody prospers by working. But we're living in the last days here. It's not going to matter anyway. But just remember, every single thing that you did on this earth, you have to answer for. So if you're stealing money from the government, you're basically stealing from God himself. You know, God is saying, thou shalt not steal. If you're taking food out of your grandma's, paycheck so you can sit around and do nothing, you're going to have to answer for that one day. Basically, the system they had when Israel, the Jewish nation, went over to the land of milk and honey, that was the greatest system in the history of the world. When those 1 million or 2 million Jews, after the 40 years in the desert, the next generation went over. That was the greatest system. Where every single person worked at something. And only like 1% of the people were actually disabled and they were taken care of. But today, you go on National Public Radio, they say, 20% of the population is on welfare. 40 to 50 million people get food stamps. 50 to 60 million people get subsidized health care. I mean, we went from 1% disabled people in the Bible, and everybody there was working and wealthy and rich in the land of milk and honey. Well, here in the last days, in the days before Noah, what happened? People stopped working. Noah's Ark. Noah's building that ark. It took him 100 years. I mean, he lived to be 700-800 years old, whatever it was. It took 100 years to build that ark with his sons and their wives and his wife. And for 100 years, people would keep coming up to Noah, making fun of him. And what was happening right before it started raining and Noah and his family were in the ark with all the animals? What happened? People were having lots of sex, adultery, lots of pornography, lots of drunkenness, laziness, no work, stealing from each other, sleeping with your neighbor's wife. God said the whole world, now I'm paraphrasing, the whole world in their hearts has become evil at every thought they have. And God said, I have to destroy it all. Well, that's what's happening here in 2025. The whole world, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? And Jesus is going to rapture the church. Another one of your Democratic heroes, President Kennedy, ask not what I can do for myself, but what I can do for my nation. Do not think about myself. I mean, President Kennedy is your number one hero. Barack Obama is your number two hero. And President Kennedy said, spend your entire life giving to the nation. Don't even think about yourself. Now, he himself did not live up to that. That man, he was very wealthy, and he was sleeping with like 10 different women at a time. And same with Barack Obama. He says about the same thing, but he's worth $250 million. If you want someone to follow Jesus Christ. See, what you're basically doing is you're looking at God and saying, God cannot provide for me. I'm not going to go to work. I'm going to go to the government and have the government provide for me. But when you go on disability, when you go on food stamps, you're entering, now I'm not for it and I'm not against it. I'm telling you the facts. You enter a part of the system that slowly destroys you. Look at these, this water, so there's some salmon in the water, right? I went over an hour, yes. There's some salmon in the water here. And a capitalist would go out with a fishing rod and start catching those salmon and bring some into shore and put some in his freezer and sell some and make money. Or a capitalist would put 4 people, tourists, on the boat and take them out fishing and make $400. But a socialist says, I want the government to force the people coming off the water to give me some of their food for free. I want some free fish just because I breathe the same air as everyone else. You say, well, Christian speaking, what are you bringing to, what are you providing? What are you contributing? You say nothing. I want to sit at home and play video games, but I still want you to feed me for free. Well, if you have You look at those trees over there. Houses are still made out of trees. So we go into the forest here, and a capitalist will cut down some trees, take it to the lumber yard, create lumber, come back, and replant more trees. And then in 40 years, you can have all the trees again. So they'll go down, they'll create a lumber store, then they create construction jobs, and the construction jobs create electrician jobs, plumbing jobs, roofing jobs. But the socialist says, I want you to give me a free house. Say, well, come out in the forest with 100 years ago. They say, well, come out in the forest with us and work, and we'll give you some of the trees, the wood, and we'll help you build a house. No, I don't want to do any work. I just want the free house. See, a capitalist goes in the Midwest and plants the food and tills the food and harvests the food and takes it down and sells it to the food companies, and they create products, and you go to the store and buy the food. The socialist says, I want you to give me free food. Well, what are you going to contribute? Nothing. I breathe the same air. I want free food. I have 4 children at home and no husband. I want free food. Yeah, but you're only 32 years old. You could get a job. No, I can't. I want free stuff. I want to sit at home and watch soap operas all day. Well, that's what's happened to the hospitals in America, and that's why they won't be fixed. Because you go to the hospital and you say, I want free health care. Well, what are you going to contribute to the system? Nothing. I'm not going to contribute anything. I don't even have a job. I just want free everything. And that's where we're at in America. The older generation is going away, and they've worked 50 years to provide for themselves. They had a 90% workforce participation rate. They took very little welfare. They built the roads, the hospitals, the bridges, the buildings, the cities for 50 years in America. Now, the younger generation says, I want all that stuff, but I don't want to work. But the young people that do work, they don't want to work over 32 hours a week. Ask anyone, ask any single person under 30 years old. Would you rather work 40 and 50 hours a week or work 25 to 30 hours a week? I've never met one yet that they say, I'd rather work 25 hours a week. And I say, well, then why don't you work 25 hours a week? They say, because they don't pay me enough. So I'm telling you that capitalism is going to, we're right on the edge here to where capitalism is going to be destroyed. Donald Trump's only got 3 years, and after Donald Trump, I don't care who comes in. I don't care if J.D. Vance or another Republican. It's over. The party, I'm not saying the party's over. No, the capitalism is over. The welfare party is just beginning. It's just beginning. And it's going to destroy America. Because we're going to get to the point And boy, this is going to be real ugly. We're going to get to the point in America where you can't make over 45, 50,000 a year. It's going to cost 100,000 a year just to survive. You're going to have about 55% of people that don't work full time. And it's going to flip upside down like a teeter-totter at a child's playground, a teeter-totter. We owe $37 trillion right now. If you had an 80% workforce participation, we could easily pay off that $37 trillion in the next 10 years. If everybody was working. The reason we have a $37 trillion debt is because everybody is on welfare. Everybody's getting some form of welfare, and in the future, that's going to grow to, within 10 years, it's going to grow to $45 trillion. And the young people are going to say, well, how come we owe so much? Because you are on welfare. Because you are not working 60 hours a week. With capitalism, you are not paying enough in taxes. And you say, well, I'd rather just sit at home. I mean, every young person I know, I would say 75% of them, I mean, you have more potential than any other generation, but you don't have the willpower. So 75% of the young people say they grudgingly go to work 35 hours a week. Say, oh man, I can't stand, I got to go to work today. This sucks. And you guys know, your generation, you know the numbers. You say, okay, I'm only going to work 27 hours a week so I can get more food stamps. I'm only going to work 24 hours a week so I can get more free, health insurance on Obamacare. And the more and more our society, our country participates in the free welfare, the more and more we chip away and destroy capitalism, the thing that completely built the United States of America. So if you're on disability today, you're helping destroy the greatest country in the history of the world. Whether you agree or disagree, I mean, I just spent 60 years, and I know this is a great country. And the reason things cost so much, well, because the government keeps taking money out of your check. It's funny how whether you like Donald Trump or not, doesn't matter. It's all just lies on the news. Everybody's screaming, Donald Trump's destroying everything. He's destroying everything. Everything we got is being destroyed by Donald Trump. He's laying off. He's taking away money. Do you know that Donald Trump, he's really not doing anything? People are upset that Donald Trump really isn't doing what he said he was going to do. Even though you're screaming every day, you look it up. Do you know that Donald Trump, after 1 year, he's only cut the government back 0.5%? I bet you didn't know that. Donald Trump has cut the government back less than 1%. You still have 99.5% of everything you had a year ago. Donald Trump's only cut the government back less than 0.5%. So now check this out. So Joe Biden let 15 million illegal immigrants into America. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I don't take a side. I'm just saying the facts. Joe Biden allowed 15 to 20 million illegal immigrants into the country. And you know, in 1 year, Donald Trump has only deported 500,000 illegal immigrants. It might be a little more, but only about 500,000. He said he was going to deport 5 million the first year. He's only done 500,000. So when you got 20 million and you take away 500,000, do you know that he has only deported 3% of all the illegals that came into the country? He's only taken and cut back the government 0.5%. And he's only deported about 2.5% to 3% of all the illegals. That's it. But if you go on, the news, which I do not own a TV, but they screaming and yelling all day long that Donald Trump is killing people. He took away $500 million away from National Public Radio. And they said, it's going to destroy us. But until you look at what is their annual budget. And then they said, we're just going to allow a little more advertising. Well, we're just going to hold more fundraising drives, and they'll get the whole $500 million just another way. It's just that it won't come out of your paycheck. You won't be the one paying for it. And $500 million, now I heard this on National Public Radio, it was less than 3% of their budget. Less than 3% of their budget. So if you look, I'll just leave it right there. That's capitalism. That's how it works, but it's not working anymore. It's being destroyed. And you're going to get to the point, I will say I'm a Christian, so if the rapture does not happen in the next 20 years, I think it's going to happen in 10 to 12 years myself, 15 years at the most. I think by 2037, the rapture will have happened. That's just my personal opinion. I probably got a 99% chance of being wrong. But if the rapture doesn't happen in 20 years, the capitalist society is going to be gone. Baby boomers, they're gone. They'll be passed away or in nursing homes. We don't have enough nursing homes in America to take care of everyone. And for you 20-year-olds, you're going to be 40 years old saying, what in the hell happened? I'm working 50 hours a week just to survive. A house costs $600,000. Groceries cost $400 a week. What happened? And you'll be giving 40% of your paycheck to all your friends who are on welfare. And getting free housing and free food and free medical care and free cell phones and free transportation. Don't you see that's why they want driverless cars? Don't you understand? That's why they want you to deliver your groceries and have them delivered to your house in a driverless car. Because then the government can come along and say 30% of the population cannot afford to have their groceries delivered to their house. So we're going to deliver them for free in a driverless car. And so you think, you falsely believe. Now, for me, I just go to the Bible. What does the Bible say about money? And then you would always be okay. But 80 years ago in America, you can look this up. You know, about 85% of people in America believed and claimed they were born again Christians for Jesus Christ. Well, then came TV, you know, the internet, all this junk, the movies, and now 40% of Americans claim to be born again Christians for Jesus Christ. That number goes right in line like a railroad track, side by side. The more the belief in Jesus goes down, the more the belief in socialism parallels side by side. See, that's the enemy's tool. That's the devil's, workshop, I should say. Do not give the devil a foothold. But, and I'll leave it right here. It's not a happy life. Socialism is not happy. You think, well, I'll just sit around and do nothing. No, I have a lot of neighbors in the town I live in. They are on welfare and they are miserable. They sit around all day because they have no car to go anywhere. They sit around all day and they can't eat well. Look at this crane right in front of me. Look at that. They sit around all day. They can't eat well because they don't have enough money to go out and buy a steak or something once in a while. You're at the mercy of your landlord and the state, telling you where to live and how much you're going to pay. And the Bible teaches a man who doesn't work really is a miserable man. Oh, you start out thinking, I just hit the jackpot, man. But later on, you start to realize your self-worth starts to go down. That's why most people, you can check in, most people on welfare eventually need therapy or counseling because they start to question their own self-worth because you're not doing anything. You get up and you eat your meager breakfast, your meager dinner. A lot of these guys, they'll buy beer. That's why they turn to alcohol and smoking and gambling and pornography. That's why they turn to these things, looking for something to fulfill the hole in them. But you see, through work, whether you believe in capitalism or socialism, it doesn't matter. God talks about work. Working gives you self-worth. Your hands moving, your legs going, it gives you health, it gives you muscles, it gives you self-worth. You're working side by side with other people. It gives you camaraderie. It gives you ideas, and it gives you wealth, money. In a wise man's house are many good things. Not really a rich man's house. A wise man keeps many good things in his house. But when you're on on socialism, welfare, you're sitting around. Everybody else is out working and you walk down the street to the 7-Eleven at, 1 o'clock in the afternoon just because you're bored stiff. You say, well, why is that? Well, it's because it's the way God created you. God created man to work, like to buy a boat and restore the boat. That gives you a sense of fulfillment. To buy a car and restore the car. To buy a house and paint the house. Take care of the lawn. It gives you a sense of accomplishment, and that accomplishment gives you a sense of self-worth. Following Jesus Christ gives you a sense of humility and self-worth and meekness. I don't care if you write a 100-page book and publish it for free on the internet. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. I've lived around welfare people for 30 years now. I myself have never taken welfare, but I've lived around them, and every single one of them, after they're on welfare for more than 1 year, I would say, they're miserable. I walk out of my apartment and neighbors say, "Where are you going?" I say, "I'm going to work." Well, damn, man, how much do you work? 40 hours, just 5 days a week. And they're out there, in their pajamas or their underwear and socks or flip-flops, taking out the garbage. I'm going to work, and they have no sense of belonging, no sense of accomplishment. And let me tell you, every one of you on food stamps right now, you just got a taste of the future. All 42 million of you, and you did not like it. You just said, hey, how can the government just turn off the food benefits like that with only a 1 week notice? How is that legal? Well, the judge just told Donald Trump, you got to pay the benefits, and he said, okay, out of an emergency fund. He said, okay, we'll pay half, because the emergency fund isn't enough to pay the whole thing. And so they're going to try to open the government within the next 2 weeks. But those same Democrats who refuse to open the government, the same ones that gave you your welfare, they took your food stamps away so you would get more health care. That's what union people do. The union says, if you go on strike and stop working, we'll get you better wages later on. And some of those people are on strike for a year. And you just lost $50,000 of your wages. But you're on strike. And they say, hold the line, hold the line. We're getting you better wages. And you're saying, I'm never going to get my $50,000 back again. I'll never get it back. They'd have to pay me $5 an hour more to get me $50,000 back in the next 6 or 7 years. So these people go on strike for a year, and you go back and you usually get about $1. You lost $50,000, and you're going to gain $2 an hour more. I mean, $2,000 a year more with your $1 raise. It would take you 25 years to recover from your $50,000 loss. But the union leaders, look at that gray hair and crane right there. The union leaders, they didn't take the people up in the office, they didn't take a wage cut. They still got paid every week, every month. Well, that's what Chuck Schumer just said. We're trying to force, because he's a big union man, Democrat. He's old school union. We're trying to, and he's worth, $50 million. We're trying to force the Republicans to give you more health care for free. And we're going to withhold your food stamps to do it. How is that benefiting you? I'm not talking about capitalism and socialism. How is it benefiting you? We took away your food stamps so you'll get more health care down the road. How did that benefit you? Well, what's going to happen is they're going to give half the benefits. And they say the government's going to open in 2 or 3 weeks, before the Thanksgiving break, probably. And then you're not going to get any more health care. And then they're going to come back and do the budget for next year and discuss what they're going to do, just like they said in the first place. And absolutely nothing happened. It's kind of like going on strike. And then you get a $1 raise, and 9 months later you go back to work at the exact same job you were, but then you lost all this money, and now inflation went up, and your $1 increase per hour, inflation took the whole thing. Every single time someone says, I want something for free that I didn't work for, the system crumbles a little bit more. And so I will end right here. This time I actually end the video. So you're standing on the shore here as a socialist, a welfare person. You're standing on the shore. And you say, how come you're standing here? You say, I'm waiting for someone to go out and go fishing and come back and give me my government-required free fish. I'm waiting for someone to go out, get in the boat, go fishing, and come back with my government-provided, by law, free fish. Because I'm one of the 25% of people on welfare in America, and by law, they have to give me some of their free fish. And here's the deal. It's to the point now, it's a teeter-totter. How many people do you see out there fishing right now? The only people you see fishing are the seals. Good luck getting the fish out of their mouth. So you don't see anybody out there fishing, because the government regulates you can only fish so much, so often, certain times of the year, and you're sitting here on the shore right now without your food benefits in November 2025. You're sitting here going, nobody gave me my free food this month. You say, well, the food bank will give it to me. Nope, the food banks really didn't do anything. Well, the state of Oregon will do it. And they said, no, we're not going to put any more money towards it. I think they put $50 million, which is a meager amount, towards all the food banks in the state, which would give everybody a couple extra boxes is all. You don't get that much. I mean, dang, I go to the store, and you guys know how frugal I am with the food. And the other day I spent like $35 on food, and I didn't even get half a bag of food. Well, I bought something, I bought the expensive stuff, but so as a socialist, a young male socialist, under 30 years old, you're saying, I want my free stuff. I asked one of my neighbors once, well, what happens if they ever turn off your disability? And he said, Well, then I would be forced to go back to work to just at least get food. He said I'd be homeless, but I'd have to work. See, the way it worked 80 years ago, 70 years ago, 60 years ago, 100 years ago, there was no socialism. There was none. Not in America. It was only 50 years ago. The only thing you get is cheese and bread, and if you were lucky, they had some extra milk to give you. But some of that milk was spoiled. That's all you got in America 60 years ago. That's all a poor person received. You know, I saw a guy here, not a guy, a woman, on the Oregon coast, and during salmon season, she's Chinese. And she went over to the garbage cans. She was like 55 years old, I think, and she came to America about 15 years ago and became a U.S. citizen. She lived 40 years in China, and I asked her once, what are you doing? She says, I'm taking all the bones and stuff out of the garbage can because, she said, American fishermen always leave good meat on the fish. She said, in China, we never leave that meat on there. It's just little scraps. So she would sit there 2 or 3 hours cutting scraps off the bones the fishermen left behind. And after about 3 hours, she would walk away with 5 or 6 pounds of perfectly good salmon meat, which is like $30 a pound. This woman would get like $150 in salmon meat for free because she was from China, a communist country, and a scrap of fish could save your family's life from day to day. She said, in America, she says, everybody throws away everything. She said, everything in America gets thrown away. She said, in China, anything that is useful, you would never throw away. Not a can, no. You recycle anything just to get a few pennies. Now, we're talking China 40, 50 years ago. So she would walk down here, and she says, at first, she didn't want to talk to me because she thought I was her competition. I was going to take the fish. Oh, no. I said, I'm just curious. I don't care one way or another. I don't do this. So then she started talking to me. I thought she was looking for bait to go fishing, but it was funny, you know, here on the Oregon coast, people think they go crabbing, so they think that crab are attracted to chicken breasts. Crab don't eat chicken. Crab eat other dead fish. So these tourists come down, they'll go to the Fred Meyer or the Safeway and buy, I'm not joking, $20 worth of chicken. And they think that crab are attracted to that. They're not attracted to that. They're buying $20 in chicken, putting it in the crabbing pot and throwing it in the river to catch $20 worth of crab. Now think about what I just said. And I said that to this woman, this Chinese woman. I spoke to, this only like 6-7 years ago. And she said, yeah, she says, only in America, she laughed, only in America would you throw $20 worth of good chicken in the river to catch $20 worth of crab. And there it is right there, people. Capitalism is dying, but then socialism will be broke because there will be no money. And this is all coming to America within 10 years, whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, whether you agree with capitalism, socialism, or communism, it doesn't matter. The system is upside down now. It costs $2, $3, $4, $5 trillion a year just to keep America running and pay the interest on the debt we owe. So ask yourself, where am I going to get my free welfare and my free food stamps and my free subsidized child tax credits 10 years from now? When everything starts collapsing, I was looking at automobile auctions online, and the dealers are paying tens of thousands of dollars for used cars with 100,000 miles on them. They're paying $10, $20, $30, $40, even up to $60,000 for these cars and trucks used, just so they can have more product on the car lot to sell. They're running out of used cars. So when you go down to buy a used car, when you go down to get a used car, that's why you have to pay, $45,000 for a used car. It's completely and totally going to destroy America. It's already happening right now. And just one last thing. 60 years ago, 3% of Americans were on welfare. Kind of lining right up with the Bible. And if someone needed welfare, you, like your parents, your grandparents, you took them to your house and took care of them yourself. Or the church took care of them. Today, we're lining up with 25% of Americans are on welfare. See this crow that just landed right here? That crow will never be on welfare. That crow knows if I don't go out searching for food today, I'm going to starve to death. I don't know how the crow knows. God created the bird to know. If I don't look for food today, see, this crow's looking around for food. Everywhere, everything he does, he's looking, he's working. Nothing is free to the crow. The crow is not a welfare. Only humans can create welfare. The crow knows if I stop moving, something else will come and eat me. But humans know. They say, if I stop moving, that's prosperity. If I can sit around all day and play video games and look at my cell phone, then I'm going to be prosperous. No, you don't understand. If you're young, like 20 years old, you are creating your own future demise, you're creating your own future downfall. You just don't know it.